Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tio and the Arcane Bear. One of the interesting parts about having a constant conversation is always remembering to find yourself in the ability to be bewildered, to learn something new and to be entertained by that learning of something new, because often that routine can become a little tiring, boring. I don't know if any of you have ever practiced playing a musical instrument, but there are moments where you get bored with how good you've gotten and you want to continue to strive to do more. And to do that, you generally have to continue to do the routine, monotonous things and make fun of it as we do it. So we got Bitcoin on the 6 hour this time, switching it up, not straight into the 4, just to change our view on things a little bit. Because again, as you go through, you are increasing the levels of complexity of what it is we're trying to learn and the value of how that works over time. Now, we've talked many times about venture capital in our previous videos, and you'll generally remember my sentiment here about an interest in asymmetry, which is, okay, it could be worth nothing or it could be worth a lot more in terms of my investment focus. So one of the unique aspects about venture capital is we're normally generally saying to the market, hey, look, I don't know the future outcome, so let's take more risks, but in smaller amounts across the board. I think if we were to look, if you had put like $1,000 in the BNB token when they first kind of launched, it'd probably be worth like maybe $1 million today or something. And that's pretty ridiculous. So if we counter into the fact, well, it could have been worth nothing, it was definitely worth taking a bet on. And I want to remind everyone that Ashley Action, the person who just invests and continues to go about their life, does really well to make sure that you really sit and focus on what that means for other areas, because sometimes just doing something and not thinking about, oh, I need to spend the rest of my life playing the drums. Well, just there's a drum kit there, smash it and see what happens. Okay, so Bitcoin on the 4 hour, going through and consistently trying to learn something new. Had a very, very nice bullish move straight outside of the box. Very little resistance here. Even the backup phase didn't continue within a range for anything more than 24 hours before continuing up. It was funny, yesterday I made this video. I'm sure you guys watched it. And someone commented, I just deleted their comment because I have to approve everything. Otherwise, it's just full of spam and other people trying to send spam crap in comments in this sector. Is they're like, oh, I shorted Bitcoin at 57,000 or 56,900 or something. And you said it was going to continue to go up. But we had that nice little supply test yesterday. So again, while we're going through the market, when we go in like closer, we can see these moments that are really quick supply tests. This nice red candle here. And a lot of people want to know, okay, well, what relevance do these candle wicks have? Is it on the daily, the 6 hour? A lot of that is actually, I kind of remove as noise in general. For those of you that have joined the channel for a long time, you'll remember that we almost used to always use the area charts. The only reason I've switched to the hike and ashes, again, this is to increase my level of learning because my interest. So to switch something by trying different time frames, focusing on how these other characters kind of move and shape my interest. And here with Bitcoin on the 6 hour and the area chart, I actually get a much clearer picture, I think, of some of the resistance we were hitting along before the spring and the continued LPS and tests as the breakout. So here, this kind of final SOS phase, it was very short-lived. And as a matter of fact, if kind of looking back, we could almost equate it to this very thin box. And when you kind of mess around, again, we have some videos on how to use TradingView, but in general, I guess the focus here is to make lots of little experiments on a day-to-day basis with your learning practice so that you can make it exciting, because it can get very kind of boring to get through years and years of practice. Right? For any of you that play music or have done yoga for like many hours, you'll definitely recognize this course of events where what you love also becomes a little slow and boring. So if you switch it up, you increase your learning and your ability to intake that because you're excited, you're bewildered, and you're continually curious. So this area chart actually makes this Bitcoin chart look very clear. And I usually like using these, especially because on the smaller time frames, the wicks can seem absolutely ridiculous. So if we go back to the hike and ashy and where we had circled, you can see that yesterday there was a quick supply test. But again, often what I want to do is kind of remove all the noise. And that's what this area chart does a really good job of. It says, okay, well, let's get rid of the guy who who shorted Bitcoin at 5690, and we just had a quick drop on a wick down to like 54,000. Doesn't even show up on the area chart on the 4 hour, the 1 hour. It's pretty much non-existent. And even then, when we look down, the only real information bias we have was this big supply that came in here, or as some people like to call it, the volume. So when we're removing the noise, it allows us to make a more confident and calm decision based off of less and less factors. And that's actually a really high decision standpoint. We have enough scientific studies as well in the literature to know that we actually get a better resolution of what we're about to see if we were actually given less information, because then we just make a confident choice earlier, faster. And this is likely from pattern recognition, where you would hear something in the forest and you don't innately think it's a deer. You're more likely to go bear and have this instinctual kind of moment take over, because that's how we've survived. So again, when we remove that area, when we remove that noise, and the area chart is a great way to kind of clear out the space. You can't see these large wicks anymore. So I do constantly jump back and forth that, even though we've been using Heiken Ashi. So I kind of want to make that the first part of today's episode, something just a little bit different. And for those of you that have been wondering why I've been using the Heiken Ashi charts more than the area chart lately, and then also why I love the area chart. So we've broke out right past this resistance. It's been very strong. We've seen a lot of weakness in the other sectors as well. Cardano had a nice explosion, but let's just take a look at Ethereum. So here with Ethereum, we have that same supply check that came in. And during a bull market, the big composite operators are playing in pretty much everything here. So they move kind of frequently and consistently together. And this we've gone over with the volatility index, but here again you can see that very large spring, very noticeable on the Heiken Ashi, and then in the area chart it all but disappears. So here we see the area chart can provide us a much clearer resolution of the image that we're trying to take a picture of without including our bias. And that's really what we're trying to do a lot of the time, is remove our own instinctual kind of need to caress a pattern to where we want it to be, right? Generally, when you make a hypothesis in the scientific world, you are betting on an outcome, just much like you would in the investment world. So you want to remove your biases as much as possible when going through, so that I'm not just going, yeah, we're in a bull market and that's what I believe. I want the market to, I want to hear the market say that on a consistent basis. That's kind of like, it's kind of how I feel the importance. And often there's other ways to go about this idea too, which is to come up with the best results. I'm sure you hear artists talk about this. You kind of like have these out of body experiences. And the only way to do that is by consistently practicing removing the noise and focus on, well, what is the signal of the market saying, not what am I predicting? And I've kind of mentioned this in other videos, but I'm not predicting the market. I jokingly say we're trying to be like market whisperers, and that's the truth. The market is telling us a moment by moment story of how the supply and the support or the demand of that supply is really held into place. That's what all this does. It allows us to basically calculate interpretation of value through human psychology based off a supply and demand characteristic, or Richard Wyckoff called it the effort versus result. And when, again, the point of what I wanted to go over today was to constantly be learning, or what is that? Always be closing, but always be learning, always be growing. There's a focus here where this skill set over the course of a decade is extremely powerful. Venture capital as well too. And when we are looking at these ideas, we want to remember that they are like venture capital. These are very highly volatile, highly risky, early stage product development protocols in like a new industry. So you can see a massive growth and massive collapse. And we've already seen that a few times in this particular ecosystem. So now I think it's the telling the story, and for all the Arcane Bear members, I wanted to go over this too, is that there's like two parts to this story. Number one, when you first enter the market and you buy, most people, and if you're new to this ecosystem, whoever is new on this channel, like the first time you guys are buying, you buy near the top or on the way to the top. You generally don't know how to get in back here, like near March when the WHO declared a pandemic, because you're not used to thinking like a sociopath. Most people aren't, right? It took practice to get here. Where I was like, oh, wait. And I guess maybe not sociopathic, but at least a little abstract to in the middle of a pandemic go, ooh, yes, look at all those sweet depreciative assets dropping to the floor while everybody gets scared. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go buy those assets. Yes, I'm going to want to buy more of the Bitcoin right in the middle of the pandemic. I shouldn't be thinking about vitamin C or D or how you sleep. No, you should just be thinking about buying more assets in the heat of the fear moments that the consciousness generally goes through. And that's where you'll yield the best results. So when you first join, you join in the wrong part of the cycle because you haven't learned some of the basic skill sets of what it takes to be a good investor through time, which is to wait till the hype dies down, to reevaluate things and make constant, consistent goals for accumulation in these low times, and then wait until these big explosive moments happen. And sometimes they will just continually happen. Very, very reminiscent. The S&P 500 has pretty much only ever gone up. It's had what they call corrections, and then it goes up more based off the idea we're producing more wealth, we're producing more people. So venture capital, I think, is the really macro perspective of if you want to know how to play the game, first you make the mistake of buying in at the top or something. Well, this is not the top, but like on the way to the top. And then and then as you start to learn, hopefully you recognize that there's this two-part cycle. You have the accumulation range, which is down where we were for Ethereum, below $400. And then what we've started to do now is go up into the markup phase. And we get this kind of idealized market cycle where you go up and you make another huge move upwards. Now, these two parts, I think, are just part of a much more important series of events which people should be interested in, which is the rise and fall of company interest in the early seed stage. Now, first off, note that generally you're investing in like 10, 20, 30 companies, all in a similar genre, and you're signaling to the market, I don't know what's going to happen, right? So you've got Ethereum, we've got Avalanche, we've got DOT, we've got Band, there's Polkadot, I guess to be more formal or informal. I don't know, however you want to look at that one. DOT, I think probably sounds more formal. These variations that are all using smart contract layers to help solve these particular problems, right? So generally when you're making these big investments, you're like, well, I don't know, so let's put money in all of them. And what can often happen is because you don't know where we are, you start off in the wrong place and you get the sickness of the investor, this moment where you buy into the middle without having made too many early entries. Now, we're still early in this bull market, so I'm very confident about where we're going for now, right? But that changes, the market cycle turns around, and eventually what you'll see is these big blow off tops. And this is a nice one. We have accumulation, a breakout, reaccumulation, and then probably another big market cycle high before this thing kind of kicks off a finality. And we've seen that happen a few times. But when you're thinking about venture capital, you're like, okay, well, maybe this game takes longer. And this is one of the interesting parts about the HODL mentality, or the paperwork we've gone over, which is the best investors are dead scenario, which is, let's take BNB just as an example, right? It's now top number 3 token. We're $287 freaking dollars. And look at this, all-time low on October 19th, 2017, to 724,000%. 724,000%. That means if you put $1 in, I believe, every dollar you put in on October 19th, it would be worth 724,000 or 72,000. Either way, both astronomically high numbers. It only needed to be a few $100 in those early days. So every year, if you continue to make venture capital bets and you think, well, what happens to this sector over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Well, yes, some of them, even in low amounts, might be worth nothing. But that low amount, even a few $100 in something, could be worth a massive amount more. And you generally don't see that larger macro perspective of how both of the stories get played to get there, because Binance dropped low again for a while after it was up, had another reaccumulation phase. We were going over that in August, and then had a massive explosion again. And it will move this way through the market cycle. But now this is all venture capital. This all has a very high asymmetrical risk of massive growth and massive failure. So anyways, those two parts I felt were really valuable for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's kind of my my bird's eye view of trying not to get caught in the day-to-day minutia too much is to remember that we are actually learning much bigger things about market cycles and what we can do by playing in those markets, even if it's small amounts of capital expenditure. One of the most exciting things about this whole genre, and I think we saw that with the ICO days, is that you're looking at a very clear movement of people's interest to experiment or to take risks to some degree. And back in 2010, earlier than this, there's a lot of the times you could have never gotten into the deal flow for early seed stage capital. And sadly, if you're a United States resident, you maybe still can't, depending on how it's set up. But this space is offering new types of opportunities for vehicles of conversation or vehicles of information, monetary information in this particular scenario. And that's a hugely valuable potential for everyone here, I think, to recognize, is that these financial games that we're talking about, venture capital itself, can be an extremely rewarding place to invest. And I should probably tell you there, none of this is an investment advice, but I wanted to go over that. I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to make a sentiment. Okay, well, yes, we do use technical analysis, but we also are interested in what the macro perspective of this space is offered. And for a long time, that big macro perspective has been market cycle up, market cycle down. But when you look at the market cycle as a whole, you step back, we're investing hopefully in the birth of the rest of this ecosystem for the next 20 years. And that should be highly entertaining and extremely exciting for everyone. So don't get lost in the charts too much. Remember the bewildering moment that these are kind of like revolutionary times. We didn't have the opportunity to do this. It's like this camera, the microphone, the fact that we can go live. Like, guys, this is pretty crazy. Like, I don't know, maybe we don't stop to think about it enough, but the fact that this is all kind of going this way is extremely inspiring and crazy. So lastly, we'll finish off here. I do suspect that we're going to see another big accumulation pattern take place. We may not be that far away from it now. Just on a small scale extension, let's do the previous bar. We haven't done this in a while, but let's on the previous bar, like make a trading range extension. Yeah, so we could be getting pretty close to some of our finalities, or not of the bull market, but just before we start the bull. Like the bull market, the final movement of this it just goes absolutely nutso. We've seen this illiquid supply kind of FOMO technology do this before. It's doing it right now with other tokens, and Bitcoin will get to that moment where it basically just goes. I mean, it's basically gone straight up, like it has already, but we've had these are big reaccumulation patterns here, and with a lot of volatility. That market, that supply is still getting chewed up and locked away. So I do suspect we're going to see another big chunk here, maybe between 84 and 60,000, maybe even sooner than that, around the $60,000 mark here. We'll want to double check, but these are kind of like where they're the final stair step patterns before it goes elevator moment. And that elevator moment doesn't last anywhere near as long as what it took to get here, 700 or 800 days in an accumulation period. So be excited about that. We are in the kind of, let's say we're 8/14 the way through the bull market now officially, this kind of thing. So we're pretty much exactly halfway, maybe a little later than that, like 9/16. Anyways, this is Tio and the Arcane Bear. I hope you guys enjoy this eclectic wealth talk. Yeah, that was me riffing on wealth, trying to get out of my own way and just share whatever happened to be in the flow. My fun, for those of you as well, I thought that this was kind of fun. If you want, follow me on Twitter. I definitely don't post things about Bitcoin all that often. I'm currently a Pepe the Frog with a bear suit on. My tweets are commonly BNT and DMT, or BTC and DMT, my favorite 3-letter words, or I'm not a streamer. I had this one earlier. I thought it was fun. I am not a streamer. I am the stream itself. Ancient Chinese YouTube proverb. Yeah, thank you. Congratulations. I'm having fun with Twitter over here, guys. Follow me on Twitter. So I'm trying to say. And if you want, you can follow me on Instagram. I try to post rounded bottom photos there. Less eclectic, but we do try to. Oh yeah, and shout out to Glasswalker for this amazing cartoon that he did here. Glasswalker always drawing these sweet cartoons. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us. This was another episode. Tio and the Arcane Bear. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Remember to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure you've done it already. You guys are all sweethearts. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It is Sunday. I'm going out to enjoy another sunset over here in Costa Rica. Ooh, I have not. I want to show you guys something because well, I'll show you why. I'm not done tuning it yet, but I did restring it. I told you all I needed to restring the instruments, and this is a fun one. So don't get mad though. Don't be mad with me right now. But this is a really nice one. This is another version of the oud. It's totally not in tune right now, but we can kind of like show you anyways. Yeah, it's totally out of tune, but we're getting close. Tuning 12 strings on a guitar that like, or an instrument that just basically has no frets, and you can unscrew and turn into a pot and cook your rice in is always a little bit difficult, but it does have machine heads. So we're in the future, ladies and gentlemen. My guitars have machine heads. The other ones have like the wooden forks, like it's 1730 or something. Anyways, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Boom.